Here is a controversial truth nobody wants to hear. Your brand new car is not the reason it lasts. You are. According to Carfax, only about 2 out of every 1,000 vehicles ever cross 200,000 miles, let alone 500,000. Today, I am handing you the 7 habits that separate a car headed for the junkyard from one headed straight for the Hall of Fame. Let's begin this countdown, starting with the habit most people wrongly assume doesn't matter. Sabotaging your engine. At number 7 is fixing your driving style. Many people don't know this, but yes, your driving style is costing you thousands without you even realizing it. Most people assume engine life is all about parts and scheduled maintenance. Wrong. How you actually drive is doing silent, invisible damage every single day, and you probably do not even notice it happening. Here is the deal. Aggressive driving. We are talking hard acceleration from a dead stop, slamming on your brakes at the last possible second, and redlining your engine. Just because it feels good, puts massive, repeated stress on your transmission, your brakes, and your engine's internals all at once. According to U.S. government fuel economy data, aggressive driving habits can reduce your mileage by up to 30% on the highway and a staggering 40% in stop-and-go traffic. But fuel economy is honestly the smallest part of this problem. The real cost shows up much later. Every time you floor it from a stoplight, you are hammering harsh shock loads onto motor mounts, CV joints, and internal transmission components that are designed to handle power but not continuous violent abuse. Keep doing that for 5 straight years, and you are staring down a transmission rebuild that runs anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500, according to RepairPal's national average repair data. Another huge piece of this puzzle is the dreaded cold start. Revving your engine hard in the first 30 seconds after starting it, before the oil has even circulated and coated your engine's delicate internals, is basically like asking someone to sprint a marathon before they have even stretched once. Mechanics literally call this the dry start problem, and it is responsible for a massive chunk of premature engine wear because metal is literally grinding against metal for those first few critical seconds. The fix here is embarrassingly simple, and it costs you absolutely nothing. Drive gently for the first 5 minutes after starting your car, especially in cold weather. Accelerate smoothly instead of stomping the pedal. Coast up to red lights instead of braking hard at the last second. Taxi drivers and delivery drivers who put 100,000 miles a year on their vehicles and still somehow hit 500,000 miles are not doing anything magical here. They are not special mechanics, and they are not driving some secret high-tech car you have never heard of. Most of the time, it is a basic, unremarkable sedan that any one of us could have bought off the same lot, which honestly makes this whole thing more encouraging, not less. They are doing this one thing consistently: smooth, predictable, low-stress driving, day after day, year after year. There is a reason fleet vehicles driven by professional gentle drivers routinely outlast personally owned cars driven the exact same distance. It is not the car, it is the human behind the wheel. Here is one more thing worth mentioning before we move on. Tire pressure and tire rotation quietly fall under this same driving style category, and people skip both constantly. Underinflated tires force your engine and transmission to work harder just to move the car, while underlying suspension and alignment issues will rapidly destroy your tread. Skipping your rotations just speeds up that uneven wear, forcing you to buy new rubber way sooner than expected. Neither of these will kill your engine overnight, but they quietly chip away at the same margin that smooth driving is trying to protect. If this shocked you, this is only the tip of the iceberg of the many things you could potentially be doing wrong when it comes to your car. What if I told you the single most overlooked fluid in your entire car is not your oil? What if I told you that skipping this next habit for too long can turn a $200 fix into a $4,000 nightmare? Let's get into it. Rolling in at number 6 is paying attention to you. Cooling system. This one will make your wallet genuinely nervous. Everybody obsesses over their oil changes, and rightly so. We will get there. But almost nobody thinks about their coolant until the temperature gauge is spiking into the red on the highway. That is a huge mistake, and here is exactly why. Your cooling system's entire job is to keep your engine running at a stable, controlled temperature. When coolant breaks down over time, it loses its ability to resist corrosion, and it stops transferring heat efficiently. That means your engine starts running hotter than it should, even if the gauge is not screaming at you yet. According to Consumer Reports and most manufacturer service guides, coolant should be flushed and replaced roughly every 30,000 to 60,000 miles, depending on whether you are running conventional green coolant or a longer life formula. Skip this, and here is the nightmare scenario. Overheating is one of the #1 causes of a blown head gasket, and a head gasket job is not cheap. We are talking anywhere from $1,200 to $2,500 for a standard repair, according to RepairPal. And if the overheating warped your cylinder head in the process, you could be staring down a bill of $4,000 or more, sometimes close to a full engine replacement. That is a car that gets totaled over a fluid that costs less than $100 to flush at a shop. Here is exactly what to do. Check your coolant level once a month with a cold engine. Top it off with the correct type for your vehicle. Never mix coolant types. And get a full flush at the interval your manufacturer recommends, which is usually printed right there in your owner's manual. Also, watch your radiator hoses closely. If they feel soft and squishy or cracked and brittle, replace them before they burst on the highway. A hose replacement is maybe $40 in parts. A hose that bursts on the interstate and cooks your engine before you can pull over is a tow truck bill plus a full engine teardown. There is a reason those legendary Toyota Corollas and Honda Civics you hear about crossing 300,000, 400,000, even 500,000 miles. Almost always have owners who religiously flush their cooling systems on schedule. Yes, it is boring maintenance. It is also the difference between a car that dies at 90,000 miles and one that is still running when your kids are old enough to drive it themselves. One more thing. People forget entirely. Your radiator cap. It sounds like a nothing part, but a weak cap cannot hold proper pressure in the system, which lowers your coolant's boiling point and invites overheating on a hot summer day, exactly when you need protection the most. It costs about $15. Replace it when you flush your coolant and stop thinking about it. Real quick, before we get to number 5, if this kind of practical, no-nonsense car advice is actually helping you, do me a favor and drop a comment telling me what car you are trying to keep alive right now. We read every single one, and it genuinely helps this channel grow. Moving on, if you think your coolant is the only fluid you ignore until it is too late, you're wrong. There is another one hiding in plain sight, and skipping it could cost you thousands more than this one ever will. Coming in hot, at number 5 is knowing your transmission fluid matters. One thing many mechanics wish more people understood is the transmission fluid. Here is something wild. Most drivers change their oil religiously, but have never once changed their transmission fluid in the entire life of the car. That is a huge problem because unlike engine oil, transmission fluid does not just lubricate. It also acts as a hydraulic fluid that controls shifting, and it cools your transmission internals under heavy load. When that fluid breaks down, it turns dark, it starts to smell burnt, and it loses its ability to protect the clutch packs and gears inside your transmission. According to repair data from Edmunds, automatic transmission fluid service intervals are hyper-specific to your exact vehicle, transmission type, and driving habits. Severe conditions like towing, stop-and-go traffic, or hot climates can slash your service window in half, but here is the catch. You cannot rely on generic rule-of-thumb numbers. You have to open your owner's manual and follow the exact fluid specification and mileage schedule dictated by the engineers who built the car. A lot of manufacturers marketed certain transmissions as lifetime fluid, leading many owners to believe they never needed to change it. However, if you dig into the fine print of the maintenance schedules, you will find that lifetime usually just means the duration of the factory warranty. In fact, for vehicles under severe use, such as constant stop-and-go driving or towing, Manufacturers actually step in and recommend regular fluid changes, completely debunking the idea that any fluid lasts forever. Skip this maintenance long enough, and the fluid gets so degraded that it can no longer properly engage your gears, leading to slipping, harsh shifting, and eventually complete transmission failure. And a transmission rebuild or replacement is brutal on your wallet, typically running between $1,800 and $3,500 for a rebuild, according to RepairPal, and it can climb past $4,000 for a full replacement on certain vehicles. Compare that to a transmission fluid service, which usually costs somewhere between $150 and $250. That is a difference of thousands of dollars over the life of one part. Here is exactly what to do. Check your owner's manual for the specific interval for your make and model. Do not just assume it is lifetime. And if you tow anything, drive in extreme heat, or sit in heavy traffic often, service it on the shorter end of that range. If your fluid ever smells burnt or looks like muddy coffee instead of clear reddish pink, get it checked immediately. Do not wait for your next scheduled visit. This single habit alone is responsible for a huge percentage of the difference between cars that die at 150,000 miles and cars that cruise past 400,000. And do not forget the filter that comes with most transmission services. Skipping the filter and only draining the fluid leaves old debris circulating through your brand new fluid, which basically defeats half the point of paying for the service in the first place. But here is a scary thought before we move on. Unlike your transmission, which at least gives you warning signs like slipping and rough shifting, the next part on this list gives you zero warning whatsoever, and when it fails, it can strand you on the highway in under 1 second flat. Let's talk about it. Cruising into number 4 is realizing that your timing belt or timing chain matters. This one will literally strand you on the side of the road if you ignore it. The timing chain or timing belt is one of those parts that is completely invisible, tucked away inside your engine, doing its job silently for years until the day it snaps and takes your entire engine down with it. Here is what most people do not realize. Your timing belt, or chain depending on your vehicle, keeps your engine's crankshaft and camshaft perfectly synchronized, which controls when your valves open and close relative to your pistons. If a timing belt snaps while you are driving, and your engine is what mechanics call an interference engine, which describes a huge portion of modern engines, your pistons and valves will physically collide inside the engine. That is not a repair situation anymore. That is a full engine replacement situation. According to RepairPal and CarMD data, a routine timing belt replacement, done before it fails, typically costs somewhere between $500 and $900, including the water pump, which should be replaced at the same time since you are already in there. But if that belt snaps on the highway and destroys your valves and pistons in the process, you are looking at a repair bill that can easily exceed $3,000. And in a lot of cases, mechanics will just tell you it is cheaper to buy another car. The scariest part about this one is that there is usually zero warning. Your belt does not typically squeal or make noise before it goes. It just works perfectly, and then one day it doesn't. That is why this is a mileage-based replacement, not a wait until something sounds wrong. Replacement. Most manufacturers recommend timing belt replacement somewhere between 60,000 and 105,000 miles. Belts are strictly wear items with a hard deadline, but if your car uses a timing chain instead, the rules change. Chains do not have a universal replacement schedule, but they are absolutely not immortal. Their lifespan depends entirely on clean engine oil and robust tensioner design. A neglected or stretched chain can jump teeth and cause catastrophic internal damage, so never assume a chain equals zero maintenance. The bottom line here is brutally simple. This is the one maintenance item on this entire list, where skipping it does not just cost you more money later, it can literally end your car's life in one catastrophic instant on the side of the highway. When you take your car in for any major service, ask your mechanic to check the age and condition of this belt, even if you are not due yet, because some manufacturer intervals are printed in years as well as miles, and a belt can dry out and crack from age alone, even on a car that barely gets driven. Now you would think the scariest part is already behind us, but here is the twist. The next habit on this list is the one thing everyone thinks they already do correctly, and that overconfidence is exactly what is quietly wrecking engines all over the country. Let's fix that right now. Choking the engine. At number 3 is the oil and oil filter. This is the one everyone thinks they already know, but most people still get wrong. I know, change your oil feels like the most obvious advice in the world. But here is the thing. The devil is entirely in the details, and most people get the details wrong. First, the myth of the 3,000-mile oil change is basically dead. According to guidelines from the American Petroleum Institute, you should always let your vehicle's owner's manual or oil life monitor guide your service intervals. Depending on your specific engine, driving habits, and oil specification, modern synthetic oils can realistically last anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 miles. But remember, severe driving like short city trips will slash that window. So let the car's computer or factory schedule make the final call. But here is where people screw this up in the opposite direction. They see that higher number, get complacent, and start stretching intervals even further, sometimes going 12,000 or 15,000 miles because the oil still looks fine. That is a huge gamble. Oil does not just get dirty. It chemically breaks down over time and loses its ability to properly lubricate and protect your engine's internal components from metal-on-metal contact. Every mile you drive past your recommended interval is a mile where your pistons, camshaft, and bearings are getting progressively less protection. The engines that famously cross 300,000, 400,000, and 500,000 miles, the Carfax, high-mileage heroes, as some outlets call them, almost universally have documented consistent oil change histories. Here is the financial reality if you skip this. Sludge builds up inside your engine, clogging oil passages and starving your bearings of lubrication. That leads to bearing failure, which can cause a rod to literally punch a hole through your engine block, an event mechanics call throwing a rod. At that point, you are not talking about a repair. You are talking about a full engine replacement, which according to RepairPal typically runs between $4,000 and $7,000 for most vehicles, sometimes more for larger engines. Compare that to a routine oil change, which costs somewhere between $40 and $120, depending on whether you use conventional or synthetic oil. Here is exactly what to do. Follow your manufacturer's specific interval. Do not just trust a random number you heard somewhere. Use the correct oil viscosity and type listed in your owner's manual, and always replace the oil filter at the same time, since a clogged filter defeats the entire purpose of fresh oil. If you do a lot of towing, short trips, or stop-and-go driving, service on the shorter end of your interval, since those conditions count as severe driving in most manufacturer guidelines. One last tip on this one: do not trust a generic top-off at a quick lube place without checking what they actually used. The wrong viscosity oil, even if it is technically synthetic, can still leave your engine underprotected, so it genuinely pays to know your exact spec before you pull into any shop. And now we have arrived at number 2, and this is a moment to stop scrolling, because this habit is what separates the 500,000-mile legends from the cars that get traded in at 80,000. Here is where it gets interesting, though. You can nail every fluid and every filter on this list perfectly, and still lose your car early because of one habit that has nothing to do with a wrench or a dipstick. It is almost entirely a mindset, and most drivers get it completely backwards. Whispering a warning. At number 2 is the principle of early problem detection. Catching small problems. Early is a game changer in automobile longevity. This one is not about a specific fluid or part, it is a mindset. And it might be the most important thing on this entire list. Here is the pattern mechanics see over and over again. A car starts making a faint ticking noise, or a slight vibration shows up under braking, or a dashboard light flickers on for a second and then goes off. The owner thinks, it is probably nothing, and keeps driving. Weeks or months later, that nothing has turned into a full-blown, expensive failure. A small coolant leak that would have cost $80 to fix turns into an overheated engine and a blown head gasket. A squealing brake pad that would have cost $150 to replace turns into warped rotors and a caliper replacement that costs $700. A check engine light that gets ignored because the car still drives fine could be a failing oxygen sensor. Left unchecked, certain sensor faults can cause the engine to run rich, dumping excess fuel into the exhaust that can eventually melt or clog your catalytic converter. That turns an ordinary sensor replacement into a $1,500 catalytic converter job. This is backed by data too. According to CarMD's annual Vehicle Health Index, the average repair cost for a check engine light issue caught early sits in the low hundreds of dollars. But the same underlying problems, left unaddressed, routinely balloon into repairs, costing thousands, once they cause cascading damage to other components. High-mileage cars that cross the 400,000 and 500,000 mile mark almost never get there by accident. Their owners are typically the type who get a weird noise checked out the same week, not 6 months later. They listen to their car. A car talks to you constantly through sounds, smells, vibrations, and warning lights, and the owners who hit legendary mileage are simply the ones who actually listen. So here is your action step. The moment something feels off, a new noise, a new smell, a warning light, a change in how it handles, get it looked at within days, not months. Do not wait for your next scheduled service. This one shift in mindset, treating small warning signs as urgent instead of optional, is genuinely the cheapest insurance policy your car will ever have. It also saves you from the much bigger cost of a roadside breakdown, a tow bill, and a missed day of work, none of which show up in a repair estimate, but all of which hurt just as much as the actual fix. Before we get to the number one habit, the one that most people completely overlook and that can literally add years to your car's life for basically $0, hit that subscribe button right now so you do not miss the next breakdown like this one. Seriously, it takes 2 seconds and it helps this channel massively. And finally, taking the crown at number 1. The habit that ties every single other item on this list together. Without it, the rest of this list doesn't even matter. Can you guess what it is? Taking the cake. At number 1 is proper storage and protection. Yay! It matters where and how you store and protect your car when it is not even running. This might be the most underrated habit on this entire list, because most people think car care is only about what happens while you are driving. Wrong. What happens while your car is sitting matters just as much, and here is exactly why. Vehicles stored outside, exposed to constant sun, rain, snow, and temperature swings, age dramatically faster than vehicles kept in a garage or covered area. UV exposure breaks down rubber components like belts, hoses, and weather stripping, making them brittle years before they should be. Constant moisture accelerates rust, especially on the undercarriage, brake lines, and exhaust system, and in colder states. That use road salt, rust damage is one of the leading reasons cars get retired long before their engines are actually worn out. According to data from AAA and multiple insurance industry studies, vehicles kept in a garage or covered parking consistently show less paint degradation, less rubber component failure, and significantly less rust-related structural damage over their lifetime compared to vehicles parked outdoors year-round. Here is the dollar reality. A brake line that rusts through can cost anywhere from $150 to $400 to replace if caught early, but structural rust on a frame or underbody, the kind that comes from years of salt and moisture exposure, can literally get a car declared unsafe to repair, ending its life regardless of how good the engine still runs. That is a car with a perfectly healthy engine getting scrapped because of something completely preventable. Beyond just physical storage, this final habit also includes protecting your car. During extended periods of not driving it, like a long trip or a seasonal vehicle. Letting a car sit for weeks without starting it allows fluids to settle, seals to dry out, and batteries to slowly die. If you know a car will sit, do not just start it and let it idle in the driveway. Doing that creates damaging moisture. Instead, follow your owner's manual storage guidelines, hook it up to a battery maintainer, or better yet, take it for a drive of at least 5 miles every couple of weeks to actually get systems up to temperature and recharge the battery properly. Wash the undercarriage regularly if you live in a salt state. Apply a rust inhibitor spray once a year if you are in a high corrosion climate. And if you have access to covered parking, use it, even if it is just a carport. This final habit costs you close to nothing. Maybe the price of an occasional car wash and a rust spray treatment. Yet it protects the entire investment of everything else on this list. You can do a flawless job with your oil, your coolant, your transmission fluid, and your driving style, and still lose the car early to rust eating through its frame. That is why this earns the #1 spot. It is the quiet, invisible habit that determines whether all your other good habits actually get to pay off over 500,000 miles. Think of it this way: storage and protection is the foundation. The other 6 habits are built on top of, and a cracked foundation brings down even the best-built house. There you have it, the 7 habits standing between your car and the legendary 500,000-mile club. None of these require a mechanic's degree, and none of them are expensive compared to the repairs they prevent. If you found this valuable, click on the next video on your screen right now. I have got another one waiting for you that dives even deeper into keeping your car alive for longer. Thanks for watching.